Hello guys, so now we shall be mainly concentrating on cerebellum. Okay, what are the different lobes within the cerebellum, what are the different parts, what are the different surfaces and all, everything we shall be discussing right now. Okay, so first of all let us put on the heading of the topic, that is your cerebellum anatomy. Okay, so within this cerebellum you have got different parts. For example, the first important thing over here is this part over here is your midbrain. Now after the midbrain, the second important thing which you have over here is your pons. All of you know that. So this is your pons, and after that you have got your medulla oblongata like this, and continuing down is your spinal cord. The next important thing is that here you have got this part is called as your cerebellum. Okay. Now in the cerebellum there are three important things you need to understand. So first of all let me write down these parts. This part is called as the midbrain, this part is called as your pons, and this part is called as your medulla oblongata. So midbrain is attached to the cerebellum. Okay, so in this way, midbrain is attached to the cerebellum with the help of superior cerebellar peduncle. Pons is also attached to the cerebellum with the help of middle cerebellar peduncle. And medulla oblongata is attached to the cerebellum with the help of inferior cerebellar peduncle. So let us write down these things. So this one is called as superior cerebellar peduncle. Superior cerebellar peduncle. So what is the other name for this superior cerebellar peduncle? This is also called as brachium junctum. Okay, this is also called as brachium junctum. Okay. Next important thing is the next one we have got over here. This one is your middle cerebellar peduncle. Middle cerebellar peduncle. What is the other name for this middle cerebellar peduncle? It is also called as, and by the way it is coming from the pons, so you can call it as brachium pontis. So this is called as brachium pontis. And the third and the last important thing is your inferior cerebellar peduncle. Is your inferior cerebellar peduncle, which is also called as restiform body. Which is also called as restiform body. So there are three important things over here. What are those three important things? One, you call it as brachium junctum. Other one you call it as brachium pontis, and the third one you call it as restiform body. Okay, so these are the three important things over here: superior cerebellar peduncle, middle cerebellar peduncle, as well as the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Now if you look at the cerebellum has got borders, it has got surfaces, it has got notches. So how many borders, how many surfaces and how many notches are there? It has got two borders, it has got two surfaces, and it has got two notches. So let us discuss what are those. So for example, it has got two notches. I will explain you where are these notches located. Everything I will show it to you in the picture. It has got two notches. What are these two notches which are located here? Yeah, so it has got two notches. So what are these two notches over here? One is called as the anterior notch. One is called as the anterior notch, and the other one is called as the posterior notch. Anterior notch as well as the posterior notch. These are the two notches. Now after these two notches, the next important thing is it has got two surfaces. It has got two surfaces. So what are the two different surfaces which it has got? Two surfaces are, one is called as the superior surface, another one is called as the inferior surface. One is called as a superior surface, another one is called as the inferior surface. Okay, and the last and the final important thing is it has even got two borders. It has even got two different types of borders. So what are the two different types of borders that are located over here? So one is called as anterolateral border, another one is called as posterior border. So one is called as anterolateral border, and the other one is called as your posterior border. Posterior border. Okay, one is called as the anterolateral border, another one is called as your posterior border. So overall here, what are the important things you can see? That you have got two notches, you have got two surfaces, you have got two different kinds of borders. Okay, so when it comes to these notches, we have got one is called as the anterior notch, next we have got the posterior notch. Surfaces, one is called as the superior surface, another one is called as the inferior surface. Borders, we have got one is called as the anterolateral border, another one is called as a posterior border. So these are the things. Now out of all these things, what are the things that you can show it on the picture, right? So let me draw this picture and show it to you. So this is your midbrain, this is your pons, this is your medulla oblongata as well as your spinal cord. Okay, and all the way here, this part over here is called as your cerebellum. Now here, if you very clearly look, this is called as your fourth ventricle. So this part entirely, you call this entire part as your fourth ventricle. Now fourth ventricle has got a floor, it has got a roof. For example, you see this part, this yellow color line which I am drawing, this pink color line which I am drawing right now, this becomes the floor of the fourth ventricle. And this green color line which I am drawing right now, this becomes the roof of the fourth ventricle. So floor as well as the roof. So this is called as the floor, and this one over here is called as your roof of the fourth ventricle. Now if you look on the posterior end, posterior side, on the back of the cerebellum, here you have got a small notch. Okay, so this notch which you can see on the back, this is called as your posterior notch. So how many notches did we discuss? We discussed that there are two different types of notches. See, one is called as the anterior notch, next is posterior notch. So this one is a posterior notch. And then where is this anterior notch? See, this is your anterior notch. This center one is called as your anterior notch. So can I tell anterior notch of the cerebellum forms the floor of the fourth ventricle or the roof of the fourth ventricle? It forms the roof of the fourth ventricle. Okay, it forms the roof of the fourth ventricle. So two notches, anterior and posterior. Now between the anterior and posterior notch, you see this fissure which is present like this, right? So this fissure that is present between the anterior and posterior notch is called as your horizontal fissure. This is called as your horizontal fissure. So what is a fissure that is present between anterior and posterior notch? That is called as your horizontal fissure. Okay, right. Now let us look at the superior view first, and then let us look at the inferior view. So now what we shall look is that we shall discuss the superior surface of the cerebellum, and we shall also discuss the posterior surface and the inferior surface of the cerebellum. So we have got surfaces. I had discussed what are the surfaces. We have got the superior surface, we have got the inferior surface. We will even look at the posterior border also. For example, let us say this is your cerebellum, right? So let us say right. So now in this picture it is very clear to you that this is called as your cerebellum, and cerebellum is located posteriorly backward, right? So this is your lateral surface of the cerebellum. What is this? This is your lateral view. Now if you are looking from the top, this is called as a superior view of the cerebellum. If you are looking from the bottom, this is called as the inferior view of the cerebellum. And if you are looking behind, this is called as a posterior view of the cerebellum. Okay, for example, this view is called as the superior view. Okay, this view is called as a posterior view. And if you see again, this is called as a superior view, and this is called as the inferior view of the cerebellum. So for much more clear concept, let me tell you this thing. So just all of you look at this animation over here. So this is the lateral view, right? So this is the lateral view. Now this was a picture which I have drawn on the face and all I have drawn upon this. Now what I am doing is that I am just turning this back. Now this part of the cerebellum which you can see from the top, this is called as the superior surface. Next, this part of the cerebellum which you can see from the bottom, right? Let me minimize this picture. Once again, let me show you the things. So this part of the cerebellum which you can see from the top, this is called as the superior surface of the cerebellum. Okay. Next, if I am going down like this part of the cerebellum which you can see from the bottom, you see this part is called as the inferior surface of the cerebellum. Next, what was this surface? Superior surface, right? Now, in between the superior and inferior surface, you see this? This is called as a posterior surface of the cerebellum. And finally, this is your lateral. Lateral, here you have got superior, this is posterior. If much more bottom, this is your inferior. So, I hope you understood now. So, this is your superior surface and this is your inferior surface of your cerebellum. Okay. So, these are the two important surfaces of your cerebellum. Now, let us in detail draw all these pictures and then discuss what are the structures that are present on the superior surface or inferior or posterior surface. Okay. So, first of all, let us start discussing with the superior view. So, first we shall discuss the superior surface of the cerebellum. Superior surface, or you can also call it as the superior view. So, on the superior surface, this is how the picture looks. This is your cerebellum from the superior surface, right? So, you see this is the superior surface of your cerebellum. Now, in this superior surface of the cerebellum, there are many important things you need to know. So, what are these important things? For example, this notch which you see a V-shaped notch here. This notch is called as anterior cerebellar notch. This notch is called as anterior cerebellar notch. So, if there is anterior cerebellar notch, obviously on the back side here, this notch over here is called as your posterior cerebellar notch. Posterior cerebellar notch. Okay. Second important thing is that if you can very clearly figure out the surfaces. Okay. For example, you see these two surfaces. In the same way, you can also see these two surfaces, right? So, these are actually not called as surfaces, these are called as borders. So, from the superior surface, from the top, what are the two different types of borders you can see actually? See, this border which you can see over here, this border which you can see over here is in the front anterior and it is lateral. So, this border is called as anterolateral border. This border is called as anterolateral border. And this border over here is called as posterior border. Posterior border. Now don't confuse border with the surface. This surface is superior surface, but the border is a posterior border. If you look at this picture over here, right, this is a superior surface, right? Now, in this superior surface here, this particular structure in the center, right, this one over here is called as anterior cerebellar notch. Okay, this one on the back you call it as posterior cerebellar notch. Anterior and posterior cerebellar notch. Now what is this surface over here? You see now, again I am drawing the same surfaces. You see, this is called as anterolateral on both the sides, and after that this entire surface like this entire surface is called as a posterior surface. So there are two important surfaces. See, this one is called as the anterolateral border, and this border over here is called as your posterior border. Posterior border. Okay. So this is the thing which we have drawn over here. And what is this center part called as? Center part is called as vermis. Center part is called as vermis. Okay. This is a superior view. For example, if we draw the posterior view, how does the picture look? For example, we will discuss the posterior view. Now, in the posterior view, how does the picture look? So, this is how the picture looks in the posterior view. Right. So this is somewhat, this is how the picture looks from the posterior view. Now in this posterior view also, you have got few important structures which you need to know for sure. Okay. For example, let us say that this part over here is called as your vermis. All of you know. Now in the posterior view, what are the things you can see? So let us go back to this structure over here, right? So in this animation over here, you can see this is from the lateral view and this one is your superior view. Now in this superior view, you see the right side is this one. I think it is completely highlighting. The right side is called, okay, let me see if I can draw. Yeah. So this right part which you can see is called as a right cerebellar hemisphere, and this left one is called as the left cerebellar hemisphere. Right cerebellar hemisphere, left cerebellar hemisphere. Now I can look at the right cerebellar hemisphere from the top, right? I can look at the left cerebellar hemisphere also from the top. Clear? Now what I am going to do? Now what I am going to do here is that, for example, let us say after right and left cerebellar hemisphere discussion, now I am going to turn it like this. Right? Now when I am going to turn it all the way down here, now here also I have got few important things. What are those few important things? Again, this is called as right cerebellar hemisphere, this is called as left cerebellar hemisphere. Everything is the same, right? But what is the difference? The difference comes here. What is the difference is that, for example, if I am putting this picture, previously the picture was like this, this is the superior surface. Now this is your inferior surface. Now I am putting the picture in this way. What is this border? Just look back here. Now tell me, what is this border here? Yeah, this is your superior surface, this is your inferior surface, right? And this one over here is your posterior surface, right? Now all of you just look at whatever I am showing it to you. See, this is a posterior surface. Now in this posterior surface, what things can you see? What things I can see in this posterior surface is that, first important, you see this line which I am drawing here and this line which I am drawing here. Now tell me, these two are the lines of superior surface or the inferior surface? Obviously this is a superior surface, this is a superior surface. And down here, what is this surface? Down here is called inferior. I've shown you already, and this is also called as inferior. It means from the posterior view, right? From the posterior view. For example, this is a picture. Okay, this is how it is. Okay, let me, yeah, this is how it is. This is your cerebellum. Now in this cerebellum, this surface is called as the superior surface of the cerebellum. Okay, this surface is called as the inferior surface of the cerebellum. The metacarpophalangeal joint, MCP joint, whatever is there, this surface is called as the posterior surface. Once again, superior surface, inferior surface, posterior surface. Okay, now if I am showing it to you like this, can you see the inferior surface? No, you can only see the superior surface. If I am putting my hand like this, can you see the superior surface? No, you can see only the inferior surface. But if you wanted to see the superior and the inferior, then I have to diagonally place it like this. So I have to face the posterior towards you. So when I face the posterior towards you, upper superior surface you can see, lower inferior surface you can see. So that is the same concept which I have done here. This is a posterior border. So that is the reason why you can see these two borders as the superior surface. Next, this entire border as inferior surface. Okay, but if this is superior surface, I have to write it as right cerebellar hemisphere, right superior cerebellar hemisphere. Okay, right superior cerebellar hemisphere. Okay, then this one I have to write it as left superior cerebellar hemisphere. Now then what will be this called as? This is called as right, now superior or inferior? This is inferior, right inferior cerebellar hemisphere. This is your left inferior cerebellar hemisphere. Right superior, right inferior, left superior and left inferior cerebellar hemisphere. Now you see this, there is a small depression here, right? So what is this depression here called as? I have already talked about this. This is what is called as your horizontal fissure. This is what is called as your horizontal fissure. So we have got these two important things. So right, superior cerebellar hemisphere, inferior cerebellar hemisphere, and this is called as a horizontal fissure, right? So can I tell horizontal fissure is, right, can I tell that the horizontal fissure is the one which is dividing the cerebellum into upper half and lower half? Upper half is called as the superior cerebellar hemisphere and the lower half is called as the inferior cerebellar hemisphere, right? So this is the thing. And what is the structure that is present in the center? That is called as your vermis. And next important thing, this particular part which is hanging, this deep hollow part which is hanging inside. So I will highlight it like this. Just look at this. You see this deep part. You see this deep part which is present inside, right? This is present on the posterior side, right? So this deep part which is present on the back, this part is called as vallicula. Vallicula. Okay, this deep part is called as vallicula, which is a deep hollow part that is posteriorly present. So vallicula is deep, hollow, posteriorly. Deep, hollow, and it is posteriorly present. Okay, that is what is called as your vallicula. Clear? So this is a posterior view. In the posterior view, what are the important structures you can see? In the posterior view, you can see one very important structure called as vermis. You can see right superior cerebellar hemisphere, inferior cerebellar hemisphere, left also the same. And don't forget that this is very important, that is horizontal fissure. And on the back, we have got vallicula. And coming to the vermis also, from the top, from here till here, this is called vermis. But vermis is divided into two parts. See, this part of the vermis is called as the superior vermis, and this part of the vermis down which I am drawing right now is called as the inferior part of the vermis. Okay, why? Because they are called superior cerebellar hemispheres, then these two are called as inferior cerebellar hemispheres. So obviously vermis also should be called as the superior vermis as well as the inferior vermis. Okay, now the same thing, if you look from the lateral view, it will be perfectly clear for you. For example, this is your, let us say, midbrain. Here is your pons. Here is your medulla oblongata, and then the spinal cord. Now, this is your cerebellum. This is your cerebellum, right? For example, if I am rubbing out this part over here, see, if you can see very clearly, this is your what? This is your vermis. This part is your vermis. And what did I tell you? If you remember that here I told you that there is a notch and there is a fissure called as horizontal fissure, right? So let me put those things over here. See, exactly here you have got something called as notch like this, and you even have got a fissure like this. This fissure is called as a horizontal fissure, notch as well as a horizontal fissure. Now look here very carefully. Now the important thing is that this horizontal fissure or notch, right, is dividing the entire cerebellum into upper half and lower half. For example, if I am drawing a dotted line all the way touching the horizontal fissure like this, you see this horizontal fissure is dividing into upper half and lower half. So upper half and lower half, in the sense, what do you exactly mean? What do I exactly mean is that this part is called as the superior surface of cerebellum. Superior surface of cerebellum, and this part is called as the superior surface of vermis. Surface of vermis. In the same way, this part is called as the inferior surface of cerebellum, and this part over here is called as the inferior surface of the vermis. So who is dividing the superior surface from the inferior surface? This is a horizontal fissure. horizontal fissure. Clear? So this is all you need to know regarding the surfaces and the different kinds of weaves which you have got, guys. Okay. So let us just quickly review here what are the things we have right now discussed. We discussed, for example, we discussed something called as superior cerebellar peduncle, which is also called as brachium junct. Middle cerebellar peduncle called as brachium pontis. Inferior cerebellar peduncle called as restiform body. Okay. Second important thing, we have got two notches. One is called as an anterior notch, posterior notch. We have got two surfaces. One is called as a superior surface, inferior surface. Borders, anterolateral and posterior border. Okay. So here two notches you can see, the anterior and the posterior notch. Anterior notch forms the roof of the fourth ventricle. Okay. And horizontal fissure is the one which is dividing the ventricle, which is dividing the cerebellum into the upper half and the lower half. Okay. Next important thing. So this is your superior surface. So this is your right superior cerebellar hemisphere, left superior cerebellar hemisphere, because you're looking from the top. And this kind of vermis which you can see is called as the complete superior vermis. So this is anterior cerebellar notch, posterior cerebellar notch. And this border is anterolateral, and this is your posterior border, which we just now discussed here. Anterolateral and posterior border. Okay. And this is a posterior weave. In the posterior weave also you can see all these structures, and the posterior the deep hollow posterior part is called as vela cola. Okay. So this is called as vela cola. So these are some of the important things which you need to know regarding the general surfaces and borders and notches of cerebellum. Thank you so much for watching my video. Goodbye.